Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today I have a technique tidbit video. In this, I create an art journal page, but I teach one specific technique that you can use on your art journal or your mixed media piece. So I'm working in this mini composition book for my technique tidbits, and I'm using the art journal prompt and process cards as these are techniques and steps in the art journal process, not to be confused with the 100 pick a prompts, which is more about the theme. This one, more about techniques and the steps along the way. You can get both of these as digital downloads from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. So let's review the techniques that I've had. This one, we've used drywall tape as a stencil and for texture. Here we've done the background with the smooshing technique. All these videos are available in the Technique Tidbit playlist. Here I stamped into wet acrylic paint. Here I created the background using the plastic wrap technique. On this page, which I put upside down, I started by brayering colors on. And of course, there's many other layers on all of these pages. The next page, if I can find it, is I've called it reverse the stencil technique, but people complained about that, so maybe it's the stained glass technique. Whatever we call it, it's one that you want to check out. And on this one, I stamped and I stenciled with white, which gives you a really different effect. So I'm going to find an empty page here in my mini composition book. This has been gessoed. This is really important for this technique. And we are going to remove paint through a stencil. And I'm actually going to do this on 2 different spreads because there is some variation and I just want to show. So like I said, this has been gessoed. That is key for this technique. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of interest here by putting on some black acrylic, stamping some script. What you want to start with is a non-porous surface. You want to seal that raw page. And on this one, I've sealed that with a coat of gesso. On the next one, I did it in a different way. Both will work and may apply depending on when you want to use this technique in the process. So again, I'm pointing out the importance of, with this technique, you want a non-porous surface, put a coat of gesso. That's going to make it possible to remove the paint through the stencil. So I am just using Prussian blue and yellow oxide, I believe. And together they kind of make green. Now, this is a very small mini composition book. If you were doing a larger page, you might do sections of it. Here, I could have done the whole thing, put the paint on, and been able to remove it. You want to be able to remove the paint when the paint is still wet. So, depending on your climate and a lot of things, the paint may dry faster. You don't need to put on a heavy amount of paint, but you do need to remove it in a timely fashion. I'm just putting my stencil on, and with a baby wipe, I am just rubbing or removing the paint through the stencil. That kind of gives a ghosting kind of effect. You get it lighter in certain areas, and you can play with how much paint you're taking off. You could take it all off to get white bright, or you can just take off variations of that. Now, your baby wipe or the cloth that you're using to take off the paint needs to be it needs to be wet, but not sopping wet because that will leak through the stencil. Now, when you put the stencil into wet paint, the back side of that stencil is filled with paint. So you're going to want to take a baby wipe. I did this off camera and wipe it off because if you're going to put the stencil back on, you might have wet paint and that could transfer, which may be something you like, but it may not be. So here I made sure that I'm not moving my stencil. In the first half, my stencil kind of moved a little bit. It's not perfect. You are actually adding a layer of interest. This isn't the end product. It is one layer and it gives a really lovely effect. See there, it was a little more precise on the left-hand side. So you want to make sure that it doesn't move, but if it moves, that's okay. It's a layer. Now, here's the next spread. Now, this was plastic wrap and it didn't really work, but this is just acrylic paint. It has been sealed with acrylic paint, not gesso. And so I'm just putting paint on now, as I did before, different stencil, and I'm removing the paint through the stencil. So whether you seal the paper with acrylic paint, gel medium, gesso, clear or white, it will turn it into a non-porous surface and it makes it available. If you do this on raw paper, you'll be able to lift some, but not as much. So here I'm just demonstrating, and I'm doing little by little because you don't have to apply paint to the entire page. You could just do certain areas and remove the paint through the stencil. So I want you to see the variations. You could also use this technique at various points. It doesn't need to be the first step in the process. It could be the third or fourth. As long as you have that non-porous surface there. So I'm liking this swoosh of pattern through the middle. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm focusing on teaching you this technique. I have no idea about where I'm going to go with it after this. But I know I'm going to add layers because I could just stop it here, say, there's the technique. But I always wanted to know how this looked on a piece. So I'm going to finish it. Here I'm taking Prussian blue, which is a darker color, and I'm removing the paint through that. But I'm going to use the same stencil. Now I could have grabbed a different stencil and had a slightly different pattern on there. Again, individual choice. What I want you to do is try this technique with different colors in the background, with different stencils, and do several pages, do 6 pages using the same technique, and figure out which you like. What do you like? And then that's what you continue doing. I'm just going to start you on the road to experimenting with this technique. So now we have the 2 spreads where I've used the same technique, removing paint through a stencil. It's kind of addition by subtraction. And now I'm going to finish the page. So I'm going to edge my page here. This is black acrylic paint, and I am using my angle brush and shading around the page. This frames the shade page and lets me kind of think what I want to do with this. Now, again, the goal was to teach the technique. I am not creating great art or pages. Now, right off the bat, when I had the yellow and the blue there, I thought I need some burnt sienna or red on there. That would really pop. So I dug through my focal images and I got that frond. And then I decided I wanted to add some fine marking on the page in that same burnt sienna color. So that's what you see me doing here. I am putting burnt sienna paint on this stamp and stamping on the background. This is incorporating some of that burnt sienna into the background. I always like to have something that, whatever the main color in my focal image, somehow shows up in the background. Don't just have things in one place. And as always, when I stamp with acrylic paint, I clean my stamps. So then I went and I grabbed a sentiment. This one comes from my Simplify sentiment pack. And again, that is a digital download that you can get at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. And you can blow them up for a larger art journal page or shrink them down for this mini composition book. Now, here's another way you can adjust them to fit what you're doing. You don't need to use them as I have them. Here I'm bubble cutting around the script part of this, getting rid of a lot of that excess white and basically making it smaller. And I'm thinking about leaving the top part as is, but then I decide, I want to get rid of even more of that white and make it fit all the better. I spent a lot of time creating this background, which I love, so I want to see it. So then I'm just rearranging the sentiment to fit my page. So I'm using my fluid matte medium and I'm going to glue down my focal image and my sentiment. Now this focal image is a frond. It's a stencil that I cut using my silhouette, and I did it in a sash builder where I did multiple colors through the stencil, and then I did some stamping through the stencil with that script. So it has some script there, which ties into that little bit of black script that I put in before. So I really like how that worked out together too. Don't make change too complicated, just begin. And the same could be said with art journaling. Just begin. Try a new technique. You have to start to progress. I'm giving this a good coat of matte medium on top, and once it's dry, I cut off the excess. And then I'm just shading around the frond with the black acrylic paint using the same technique. It's called floating acrylic that I used to edge the page. This just makes the frond stand out a little bit more. I could have taken a gel pen, a micro marker, and outlined it. I could have taken my fine line applicator and outlined it, or a charcoal pencil to add shading. There are lots of ways lots of techniques that you can use to get a similar effect. Another look would be to have used a white marker and gone around it. That would have brightened it a little bit, given a different effect. Or gold, which would have tied in nicely to the background. So my hope is, even if you want to try doing a similar page, there's always variations that you can do you. Here's a Sakura glaze pen, and I'm just outlining my sentiments here, just to make them stand out a little bit more. And I think that brings us to the end of the first page. Love the background, all that detail, removing the paint through the stencil. Looks great. So let's move to the second page. Well, that one's a little too close. I could put the bird on there. Not really feeling the bird today. Fronds don't work. And this is what I do. I audition. Now I like this magnolia. That kind of looks good with the white swoop through that. But I'm thinking, do I have something else? And I have this girl. Now she's full length, but what if I just used the top part of her? Would that look okay? And I was like, okay, yeah, I can use this magazine girl. So when I get magazines and I, let my friends know that I want old magazines, I just harvest out some of the girls or whatever. And this is a place that you can use them. I'm gluing this down with my fluid matte medium, and the fluid matte medium I find works really, really well for getting rid of that shine and when you're gluing down a magazine picture. Now, I want her hair to be a little bit more blonde, so I'm using some of that yellow oxide. I had it out on my desk, so I'm putting it in, and I add several layers. Some you're seeing right now, and others you won't. Then I still had that script stamp, so I thought, oh, I'm going to stamp some black script on there. But, it's really not given me any effect that I particularly like because the background is so, so dark. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll do white. And I really like that addition. to it. Now, in a perfect world, I would have done this before I glued the girl down. You know, it's never too late. It's just you got to adjust and maybe do it things a little differently. And then I decided I'm going to put some circles on here. And this is just, I've used a punch. It was scrap paper, something in the garbage. And I thought, hey, I could use that as a stencil. And so here I'm taking the yellow oxide and I'm just putting it through the 1 inch circle that I punched out. Some of it's going off the page and I'm adding this along. Really liking how this looks. And again, it would have been easier if I had done it before I glued the girl down. But you know what? I'm just kind of moving it in there, and you can grab a baby wipe and wipe it if it goes where you don't want it. There we go. So I've got the circles, and then I think, oh, I'm not done with adding circles. So I grab a lid, and I still have the acrylic paint there, and I'm just adding an open circle to that. So here, that first, well, where we remove the paint through the stencil, it's pushed to the back, but that technique is relevant to the page. If you looked at the finished page, you're going to go, okay, what technique did Karen use? Maybe you wouldn't be able to tell, but I think that's when it's a win, when you can't tell. So this, I got a sentiment from my Sassy Sayings. I thought, oh, it's good with all these magazine girls, with my Julie Nutting girls. And I'm going, I'm not arguing. I'm merely explaining why I am right. So again, I'm cutting out a lot of that excess white and then just cutting this apart. So if you're looking for prompts, whether it's the theme prompts, that's the 100 pick a prompts, that tells you maybe your focal image or the feel of the page, or the prompt and process card, which is more the steps of art journaling, including a lot of techniques, or these digital sentiments. They're all available at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. I will link them in the description box, so hit the more button. If you're interested, you can go and check them out. Again, doing a lot of the same things. Here I'm edging. I outlined the sentiment with my Secura glaze pen. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to give this a splatter of gold. This is gold paint, Liquitex Basics that I've thinned down. And I use my fan brush as my favorite way of splattering. I get the best results using the fan brush. I think this is just a cheapy fan brush from the dollar store. And there is page 2. So you got a bonus page. You got 2 pages using the same technique, the same but different. Now I want to challenge you. Go grab some stencils and you remove some paint through the stencil. So here's the first one. And the second one. So go have fun. Go experiment. Until next time, go get creative.